Hey, just before I start this, I just want to let you know why I made this video. It's basically an explanation as to why my content has dropped off in the previous half of the year. In no way is this an attack on Tony or Petscop as a piece of work. I still like the Petscop community and making videos, and I genuinely believe Tony is the most creative person of the 2010s, and he's done nothing wrong. I just feel like I had to make this before I could make anything else. Thank you. In early 2018, I clicked on one of the videos on the sidebar of Game Theory's channel after watching one of his Undertale videos. This was my first introduction to Petscop. The overall tone MatPat portrayed the series to have was very one-track. It was inherently clickbaity, as is the nature of YouTube once you're big enough, and not exactly reflective of Petscop's more video gamey elements, a lot more horror and puzzle focused. Not to say that MatPat does the series wrong, just that he gave the series a more superficial creepypasta vibe and tried to come up with concrete answers halfway through the series in an effort to explain the story, as opposed to the universe that it exists within. However, I found Petscop to be, and still do, an incredibly unique piece of performance art and storytelling. There was clearly something more to be found in this series, and I wanted so bad, though naively, to be the one to crack the case and solve it. So I started reading the progress document, rewatching the series over and over again, and, as I had nothing better to do, I started making videos with the hacked version of Premiere 2011 I still had on my hard drive since high school. I initially tried forming theories surrounding the characters, their motivations and current state of being, but every time I would start, I would hit a wall of contradiction or information gaps that dismantled whatever I was working on, leaving me to conclude that there just isn't enough solid information out there yet for me to create a theory. I would have to wait on more episodes. Eventually, I decided to just watch Petscop and mark down what I noticed. Everyone likes seeing how the sausage is made. It's why the original Japanese Ninja Warrior is much better than the crappy American version. You don't need a 5-minute inspiring preamble as to why you are competing into what is essentially a wacky boot camp endurance course. No one cares.
Man fall down, haha.
It didn't matter why things were happening. I didn't need to show how from A you eventually got to Z. I just needed to show you how you could get from F to G, and eventually, through finding these points of correlation, I'd have an alphabet. I really liked looking for things to make theory videos on and waiting with bated breath for each and every new upload. Things eventually got a bit busy and I uploaded less frequently, but I still enjoyed making stuff. Then, on the 15th of November 2019, something very nifty was found. Tony Domenico, the creator of Petscop, had his Twitter found shortly after that post. The uploader of the nifty playthrough had linked the creator's website in his YouTube description, and that website contained a link to his Twitter. Since then, Tony has tweeted about Petscop sporadically, initially conceding that he was the creator, and then getting more and more nuanced with his tweets about Petscop with growing breaks between each update. I have to say, this in my opinion was a bad move. Tony's tweets and actions following his reveal indicated a disturbing possibility, for me at least. To get it out of the way, I was first mildly upset that he used the channel and its description as a way of interacting with the audience personally, outside that of the Petscop series, turning the channel from what was entirely a canonical point of upload for Paul, and possibly the shadowy cabal controlling him, into Tony's channel. It's minor and mostly irrelevant, and obviously I can just ignore his alterations and fourth wall breaks, but this was just the start of Tony's deluge of tweets that led to the pessimistic outlook I have for the series and story. His earlier tweets were relatively harmless, with some hint drops which weren't too jarring or hand-holding, and letting us know that the one final thing was coming, that one final thing being the soundtrack. Then he tweeted this, November 21st, 2019.
Regarding the new Maker references, most of you know that this was intentional, but I wanted to confirm it. It was extremely stupid of me.
This was the first solid proof that we had that Tony, quite possibly, did not have an alphabet. He did not write A to Z, but instead may have inserted and removed relevant letters on a whim. This is made more solid with a preceding tweet. December 8th, 2019.
I never wrote scripts for the videos beforehand. I had outlines, sometimes just in my head, but I did all the writing out loud, just before recording and often during recording, They're often hearing me trying to articulate something on the fly. I think it helped.
Innocuous on its own, but with prior context, this tweet made me really start believing that each episode had elements to it that weren't pre-planned and were only thrown in as something Tony thought was cool, interesting, or just didn't think to edit out.
Cat, what are you doing?
I had confidence in him that he was still able to account for errors and not take too many liberties with what could be red herrings, but it wore down my confidence that what I might be doing might be futile. For example, in Petscop 14, does the fact that Paul talks to a cat prove that we aren't listening to the internal thoughts of some AI? Or that at this point in the story, Paul is at home with an animal and not kidnapped by some cabal or held within one of those orange rooms? Or was Tony just screwing around and that tidbit of info was literally nothing? Was he literally just playing with his cat in real life and left it in?
I like it when people interpret Petscop in a way that's most compelling for them. I don't particularly want people to understand what's going on in my head. If I did, I would have been much clearer about it to begin with.
This was January 16th and 17th, 2020. In response to a question about whether or not Petscop has any coherent story, he says,
All of it means something to me, but I don't encourage trying to read my mind. When creating something like this, you probably don't want randomness and non sequiturs, because you hope for people to have some sense of meaning and cohesion, like on an intuitive level.
This is reassuring, but it dodges the question.
I do like that mystery novel kind of stuff though, but it's very different.
Once again, a statement that hints at the possibility that Petscop might not be coherent. This series could be solved in a sense. It doesn't have to be all cleared up and everything explained, but having at least Paul's full arc be at least reasonably understandable would be nice. But the series might be a diatribe of intrigue and mystery, with no actual catharsis in the end, because the story simply wasn't there, or at least not conveyed accurately enough for us to figure it out ourselves. This culminates in the worst tweet, 30th of January 2020.
I think viewers understand Petscop more than I do, because when I see it, I think about my intentions and all this implicit stuff, and other people will see what's actually there. To me, that perspective seems more valid. I can never really see that myself, which is weird. This goes through my mind when I read viewers' comments. It's like I don't even have access to the Petscop they're talking about, so I take that stuff to heart, including the negative stuff, because you all know more than I do about what I've actually put out there.
It's not weird, Tony. It's called self-doubt. I understand to a degree what it feels like. I oftentimes believe most of my videos are incomprehensible to most people, even those who know Petscop intimately. Mainly because I see every mistake I've made, every avenue I didn't explore because I couldn't be bothered or never thought of. If I made a 2.5 year long web series, I would probably hate every second of it. All of it would reek of failure to convey my intent, because every small mistake, every accidental oversight would stick out like a slapped ass. And with this tweet, Tony seems to be making himself very clear. Something is wrong with Petscop. March 19th, 2020. An article is written with commentary from Tony about Petscop, and is to this point the last word Tony speaks on Petscop. It is released by Electronic Gaming Monthly. The article itself is the standard rundown that we usually hear about Petscop, as well as Tony's inspirations and such that fueled the project's creation. However, near the end of the article, in the section titled, Everything You Say Will Become Truth, Tony tells us his opinions on Petscop's story, what it covers, and its relation to the audience.
After working on something for a long time, your perspective on it is really messed up. I say other people have a more valid perspective because, for better or worse, it's based on the work that actually exists. It's not a puzzle to be solved, and there's nothing I would call a solution. I like ambiguity, not as a tease or a challenge, but something that stands on its own. It's not that I'm asking people to literally fill in all the blanks with their own answers either. That's fine, but if you do that, you remove the ambiguity, and change the atmosphere of the entire thing.
Tony, the work must to some degree have structure. A puzzle with missing pieces still has at its heart a picture it was trying to convey. Uncompleted on its own does make it its own form of art, I guess, and of course we can get a clear picture of what the picture was meant to be if not all the pieces are there. Petscop is suspenseful. Where would that feeling of suspense be if we were merely watching Paul completely solve its mysteries one episode at a time? You need gaps for this kind of horror to work. Darkness, jumbled order of events, missing pieces, ambiguity, an incomplete puzzle. But it is still a puzzle. To say that it's not a puzzle or mystery, or that it is a puzzle but not something to be solved, is madness. Because you know what else is ambiguous? thematic and confused with missing pieces of information but isn't a puzzle? Encourages you to solve its problems but there is no solution? This.
I wonder where that fish has gone.
You did love it so. You looked after it like a son. Oh, fishy, 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 fish.
A fish, a fish, a fish, a fishy, oh.
Nobody would willingly invest 2.5 years of interest and fandom to be told that what they loved was comparable to that in terms of coherency. Why remain hidden if not to add mystique and legitimacy to the idea that yes, there is a family or cabal behind this entire thing and they run this channel, implying a story far greater than that of just themes of abuse and rebirth, a story with characters and events, not just metaphor and atmosphere. The real Petscop was not the friends we made along the way. Mid-November 2019. You sit at your computer or you're on your phone or whatever, you anonymously made one of the most interesting web series of the 2010s, and you're not planning on revealing yourself anytime soon. Suddenly, a message appears via Facebook, Twitter, text, etc. saying, "They've found you." They tell you how it happened, and that they know your Twitter now, so you feel compelled to put up a tweet. It's only a matter of time before the horde descends. You are not prepared.
What?
You've tried to remain separate for all these years as to not influence the project by talking to fans, but now you're prodded with endless questions about Petscop's finality, meaning, whether or not you released the code, soundtrack, and all sorts of stuff. The Petscop fandom isn't just made up of theorists, it has artists and shitposters as well. It has people who have developed a love for it, and for some may have come at a formative moment during their lives. You're not a monster, you won't just shirk back and tell them to go away, but you don't know what to say. You may have been separate, but it's not like you've not observed. This series means something to these people. What can you say? And how do you say it? You've never had such demand and weight placed on your words before. So you start giving answers that purely serve to clear up ambiguity about things that you might have needed to explain better, and thank the fans for their support. The problem is you never really expected the project to get this big. More of a primer for more ambitious and focused projects. You focused on the thematic and atmospheric elements of Petscop, rather than a more discernible story, and you made it fit the feeling of the game. Not that it's a rambling cohort of unconnected stories that dovetail each episode like some TV sitcom, but the ambiguity and possible missteps in the world that you've created has led some fans to the wrong conclusions, but you don't want to trample over all their ideas. So you correct blatant dead ends, but encourage the rest of the fans to just enjoy what's there. Be vague about the story and downplay its significance. Let the fans revel in their interpretations and step back from the project. Make that the true extent of the series is in the eye of the beholder. And it's that lack of trust in Tony that's really got me down. That's why I've not made videos much since Tony's discovery. The whole time I just felt like there's nothing really there to be found. Every time I started to get the inclination to search again, I was struck by the realization of, well, Tony did say everyone's point of view is valid, that he made stuff up on the fly, and the atmosphere of mystery in Petscop was more significant than the plot. So anything I do find probably won't be of any value. Just points of correlation in a random pattern. But I do like making videos, so I felt like I had to make this video. That way, any future video I do make, I can now make without feeling like I'm intentionally ignoring the possibility of author error. And that you guys now know that I'm treating everything with a grain of salt. But I will close by saying this. Tony has by far been one of the most creative people I have ever seen. He has an innate Alan Resnick-like abilities to explore mediums in weird and disturbing ways, but also keep the setting in a type of uncanny realness. Petscop could be a real game. All the events that happen feel like they could happen in real life. There is no magical just roll with it explanations or tone-deaf video game trope pandering that sucks the viewer out of the experience. Tony, you have without a doubt achieved your goal of creating a tense, dark, atmospheric mystery with believable characters and perplexing events that exist not just within the video, but also apparently in real life as well. This multi-leveled saga captured the attention of a relatively huge audience for 3 years, so I hope to God, Tony, that this mystery actually has a story.